Hello, we are delighted to present to you our solution on the second topic. With the data provided about RoboCanada, we decided to approach the first question as follows. Firstly, we analyzed the main markets using the available external data sources and concluded that all three markets are substantial in value. For example, South Korea is the second largest robo market after China. Then we analyzed the focused countries with the available risk room tool, assessing the relative risk exposure of each focus country compared to the others. After finding potential countries of interest, we then decided to additionally back up our decision with solid external facts that match with the risk room. After a thorough analysis, we opted out for three top options and compared them to the existing hub in RoboCanada's supply chain. So, for China, the relative high risk that should be mitigated is the risk of exchange rate fluctuations. China has a low risk level in transport infrastructure and can further improve on with the new Silk Road strategy. While both for China and Thailand, high risk of storms and floods should be mitigated if possible. Malaysia, on the other hand, has lowest risk levels among all the focus countries in most of the categories. Vietnam has both business environment and political and physical risks high relative to the other countries, as can be seen from the data analyzed in the risk room. Indonesia and India have fairly similar risk reports based on our analysis and are burdened by a high risk of corruption, political violence, and information infrastructure. Lastly, Russia has been exposed to a combination of both high and low risk levels, but when analyzing, we also considered several external sources to assume the further decline of the Russian economy.
Positioning on the map on this slide can give us solid indication of which three options to choose, and when factors from external sources are included, such as crisis in Russia, trade relations between China and South Korea, or geostrategic position of Malaysia and Thailand, we conclude that top three options are Malaysia, Thailand and China. We support our decision by the analysis and the data from the risk room primarily, and can claim that risk exposure in these countries is relatively low to the one of other given options. However, using the external sources, we were able to further back up the decision. Also, one can see on this graph the position of the chosen three options relative to countries where existing manufacturing hubs are located. Moving on to the what-if analysis, we assumed it is possible to mitigate certain risks in chosen countries. If setting up the hub in Malaysia, we assumed one would do so in accordance with modern supply chain practices, which can increase the competitiveness of employees, therefore lowering the quality of labor risk. Secondly, in order to mitigate the risk related to environmental catastrophes, both in Thailand and China, RoboCanada can either buy insurance policies or pay special attention to choosing an appropriate location within the specific country. Lastly, exchange rate fluctuation risk is commonly mitigated by using hedging instruments or negotiating the deal denomination with suppliers, debtors and buyers. The risk mitigation can substantially lower the risk exposure in each of the chosen countries, as we can see from the graph.
Finally, we have identified additional risks by assuming setting new assembly and distribution hub would be in accordance to modern supply chain management. This enables RoboCanada to respond to change in the environment more quickly, but requires, among other, long-term commitment to a certain strategy and, most importantly, constant monitoring not only of risk identified in the risk room, but also of risk related to supply chain specifically. Specific risks or additional areas of concern for RoboCanada to consider when setting up new assembly and distribution hub range from internal organizational risks to risk relating to the competitive environment in the industry as well. For example, risk of competition, which is interconnected with the risk of demand volatility and cost pricing volatility. Changing in any of those can substantially affect the whole supply chain and lead to increased costs through, for example, increasing inventories. Moreover, running a highly complex global supply chain faces the organization with various different risks environments to handle and increases the importance of well-operating IT and logistics systems. Lastly, sustainability of the supply chain for global organization requires a great deal of effort in order to manage relations with all the relevant stakeholders. In conclusion, we stress the importance of constant monitoring of all the relevant risks for organizations with global operations, both using the tools such as RiskRoom and reviewing its internal supply chain procedures constantly.